Okay, welcome back to Factors That Influence Population, Part 2. It's like the sequel to yesterday's. I'd say you probably didn't sleep a wink last night wondering what was going to happen next for the next three factors. So far then, the factors that we've said that influence population are number one, food supply. It can mostly affect the death rate. Number two, war, which affects the death rate and it affects the birth rate. And I'm looking around here because I've already forgotten the third one. What is it? Anyone else remember? Just talk amongst yourselves there for a minute while I find this. What else did we say? Food, war, and... Hang on, I'm going to have to pause. This is ridiculous. Yeah, healthcare. That was it. How could I forget about healthcare, the most obvious one? Alright, so food, war, healthcare, we've looked at those already, and we're going to have a look at the remaining three factors today, and we're going to get rid of me. Nope. And we're going to start off with education. Wow, education, isn't it amazing? First of all, access to education will decrease the death rate and decrease the birth rate. So literally, access to education can save your lives and give you a longer life expectancy, which basically means if you do all your assignments, you'll live longer. Alright, let's talk about this for a minute. How does access to education decrease the death rate? If you think about it, as part of your education, you learn about the importance of hygiene, you learn about the importance of nutrition, you learn about, in geography, you learn about very important survival skills and how to protect the planet. All of this will give you a healthier, longer life. It is proven that people who have less access to education die younger. It will also decrease the birth rate, and the reason for this is if girls stay in education for longer, first of all, they learn about family planning, but also it means, particularly girls in the developing world, they are less likely to get married younger. So if you take the instance of a girl who's got access to education, goes to primary, secondary, and then college, and studies something in college and then decides to have a career, well, that person then may decide to postpone getting married until a little bit later in life because they want to have a fulfilling career. Now, there's nothing wrong with getting married young either. And if that's the case, then if they're getting married later in life, and you don't have to get married to have kids, then they are probably delaying putting off having kids till later in life. And that will decrease the birth rate. Okay, so let's go through this. The factor is education. Access to education lowers the death rates. This is because people have better knowledge about hygiene, healthy diets and nutrition, and this helps them live longer. Access to education also lowers the birth rate for the following reasons. If girls stay in education longer, they're less likely to get married younger. Okay, this is because they will go on and have jobs and careers, possibly. Educated girls may choose to continue into third level education and go on to have careers. This might mean that they then delay having a family until later in life. So if they decide, right, I want to work for a few years, I want to get promotions, I want to earn some money, then they might decide, well, look, I might have a kid at 30 rather than having a child at 20. And if they start having their family at 30, they're more likely to have less children because they have less childbearing years ahead of them. Okay. Finally then, people are educated about family planning and they may choose to limit the size of their families. So you get family planning, I think. Is that an SPHE? Or, oh God, I don't know. But you learn about that and you're aware of it. And this then gives you options later in life. So in Ireland, all children have access to free education. So there is free primary and free secondary education in Ireland. And there is also a free third level for your first course. Often people choose to have smaller families so they can balance having a family with having careers. So this would then lower the death rate and it would lower the birth rate. In Brazil, education has been improving and this has resulted in lower birth rates. So if we look at the figures from Brazil, in 1980 the literacy rate, so this is the percentage of people who can read and write, was 50% for women. So only half of all women in Brazil could read and write. And the birth rate was 32 per thousand. It's quite high. Come to 2017, the literacy rate is now at 93% and the birth rate has fallen by 14.5%. So roughly speaking, the literacy rate almost doubled and the birth rate more than halved. So there's a direct link between education and less births there. Okay? Now, that brings us on to our next factor and the biggest legend on the planet, Beyonce there, after me, of course, the role of women in society. Who runs the world? Who runs the world? Who run the world? Girls. I was going to go all like singing that, but no, that's probably just more embarrassing than what I did there. The role of women in society is closely linked to education. So let's take a look at this. What we're talking, when we say the role of women in society, we're talking about how they're treated in society and in different cultures. So if women have more equal roles in society, like they would do in Ireland, so they would have equal access to education, equal access to jobs, equal access to promotions, etc., then this decreases the birth rate for the same reasons that we've just talked about. Because if they're continuing on in education, continuing on with third level, then they're more likely to have a career and delay having kids until later in their life. If they have a more traditional role in society, like they would do in some developing countries, they may be expected to get married a lot younger and to start having families a lot younger. So a more traditional role would be that they don't continue on in education, and in a lot of developing societies, it's only the sons that are educated. The girls are expected to stay at home and help out around the house until they get married and have their own kids. So this then increases birth rates. All right. Now, this is very pink and there's a lot of it, so bear with me. So the factor is the role of women in society. This looks at the status and the value of women in different cultures. In developed countries, so these are economically developed, like Ireland, like Germany, like France, like Spain, like America, there is more equality and therefore there's lower birth rates. This is because girls have access to education, women can choose to have a career outside of the home, and both of these factors reduce the number of children that women have. However, in developing countries, women have a more traditional role. They're expected to stay at home, to raise kids, and there are higher birth rates. So girls often do not have access to education because they're expected to help around the home. And like I said to you there, it tends to be the boys who get the schooling. Girls get married at a much younger age. They have children at an earlier age. And because they start having the kids earlier, they have more children in their lifetime. Because infant mortality rates, so the infant mortality rate is the number of children under the age of 1 who do not survive. So in less developed or developing countries, infant mortality rates are high. So, plainly put, this means that a lot of kids die in the developing world because of, dirty water, no medical access, etc. So women then have more kids to replace the ones that do not survive. So because women in less developed countries almost expect that some of their kids will die, then they have more children to compensate. Examples. In Ireland in the 1960s and 70s, women had a more traditional role, so we haven't always had the equal status in society. If they worked in the civil service, so in a government job like teaching, they had to give up working when they got married. On average, Irish women had 4 children. So in the 1960s, if you were a teacher and you got married and you were 22, you had to give up work, which seems absolutely crazy. This then meant that there was higher birth rates because women were expected to go on and raise a family. Fast forward, Irish women are no longer expected to work in the home. There is more equal access to careers. Now Irish women have on average fewer than 2 children. So the birth rate is almost halved because the role or the status or the value of women in Irish society has changed. All right. Final factor now is technology. And technology you normally associate with computers, but that's not what we're talking about here. Technology is basically anything that helps us to make use of the Earth's resources. This can be improvements in medical technology, agricultural technology, or sanitation. So medical technology could be X-ray machines. Agricultural technology could be using pesticides or irrigation, or even just a tractor. And sanitation could be putting in proper sewage systems or having clean water supplies. If there's improvements in all of these, then the death rate will decrease. And if the death rate decreases, there will be population growth. So let's have a look at examples here. So, improvements in technology will lower the death rate and lead to population growth. An example of medical technology will be new drugs or antibiotics and improved treatment of diseases. And you can see all of the talk around the vaccines. And that has taken a huge medical and scientific technology to produce those. Agricultural technology could be irrigation, farm machinery, genetically modified crops. So these are crops that have been made more resistant to disease or drought. Any other technology? Clean water. Okay, so remember way back, I think in first year you did it, when you talked about Dublin's water supply and filtration and all of that. Okay, just having central heating. Okay, so people don't freeze. Having a fridge so your food is kept fresh and doesn't go off. They're all technologies that will improve health and lower the death rate. In developing countries, they cannot afford to invest in modern technologies, and this is one of the main reasons why life expectancy is lower. So in developing countries, there are higher death rates because they can't invest in technology. Higher death rates then means that the population decreases. Okay, so hang on a sec, I'm just going to show you the handout for this. Okay, so I will be posting this as well. These are all of the factors that influence population growth, and it's literally just what I've gone through on the overheads there. So the factors are listed here. It's a 2-pager. Okay, food supply, war, healthcare, education, role of women in society, and technology. Then here, the effects that that factor has on death rates and birth rates, and on and in general on population either growth or decline. And then the third column over here are the examples. So this will be a PDF on the post that goes with the presentation. This does need to go into your hardbacks, okay? And it is 2 pages and there's quite a lot of it. And I realise that not all of you have access to printers. So that's why I'm giving you, that's why I've split this presentation into 2, so you've got extra time to do it. So that all of this needs to go into your hardbacks. If you can print it, great. If not, sorry, you're writing it in. Then you're going to attempt this question here. Where are we going? Okay, so, and you're going to do this for me through assignments. So explain with reference to examples you've studied how any 3 factors that you've studied influence population change. All right, so you choose 3 of those factors. Now, it's really important. Well, actually, I have it written out here. It says with reference to examples you've studied. So you must include the examples. So say when we're talking about food supply, we gave the example of Ireland during the famine. We talked about education. We gave the example of Brazil. All right. Next thing you have to focus on is how they affect population change. They affect population change because they will either affect the birth rate or the death rate. So you must say which rate that they are affecting. And then does this make the population grow or does it make it decline? Finally then, that's what I've just said, how do they affect overall population change? So for the 3 factors you choose, you've got to include all of this. Now actually not necessarily in that order because normally the examples would come last. So you would start off by saying one factor that affects population change is food supply, is war, is whatever. This can affect either the birth rate or the death rate. This can then cause the population to either decline or to grow. All right, so this will be a relatively long answer. So for each factor, you should have a good paragraph, 8, 9, 10 sentences written. All right, any questions on that, just let me know. All right, that's it. I'll put the instructions up in the normal spot and talk to you soon. Thank you.